Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to the third session of the Urban Latitude webinar series on local perspectives on global objectives. My name is Yolandi Berger, and I will be facilitating today's session together with my co-pilots, Lebu and Naledi. Thank you so much for joining us today and for making the time to attend. So today's session focuses on storytelling and community. We will explore how narrative, lived experience, and collaborative knowledge production intersects with urban observatories and place-based research. But before we begin, just a few quick notes. Please feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat as we go along. We love when you are actively engaging. We will also have time for a discussion at the end with a Q&A. You will see on the screen now is a QR link to the session survey. We ask that you try to complete the survey towards the end, please, so that we can use your feedback to improve future sessions. And I also encourage you to reflect on how storytelling operates not only as narrative expression, but as a form of knowledge production, community engagement, and interpretive practice that shapes how urban realities are understood and represented. We are delighted today to have 4 speakers, each bringing distinctive perspectives on storytelling, community engagement, and knowledge production with urban research and practice. And I just want to see whether our first speaker is already on the call. So I just want to make sure. So our first speaker is Professor Mike Wilson. He's the director of the Storytelling Academy and also the UNESCO Chair in Storytelling Education for Sustainability at Loughborough University. Mike is coming to us today all the way from India, and I see he just joined the call. So, Mike, if you're ready, can I give over to you?
You can indeed. Sorry, I was working out with the Zoom link. I was trying your Zoom link rather than my Zoom link. So apologies for being slightly late. So yes, Yolandi, I missed the first bit. So I assume that you may have given me an introduction. And so I can start my 10 minutes, can I now? Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Great. I was wondering how to use this 10 minutes. And I thought what I might do, therefore, is talk to a series of photographs. And I think this might enable me to say a little bit about what I wanted to say about storytelling in urban spaces. This photograph here of the 2 gentlemen sat on deck chairs with bunches of carnations, I think they are. It doesn't look like an urban photograph at first sight. It looks like probably more like a rural or a semi-urban photograph, but it's taken in Manchester. It's taken on the east side of Manchester in a town called Denton, which is currently in the news because there's a by-election happening there very shortly. And it was taken in the 1920s. I can't tell you the exact year, but it's about 100 years old, this photograph. And the gentleman on the right, the one without the cigarette in his mouth and with his hair being blown around by the wind there, is my grandfather. And I don't know who the other chap is. He's certainly not a family member. So we know he was a friend, and clearly a friend of my grandfather's, probably another allotment holder. But he was probably quite a good friend, a close friend, because he does appear in quite a few of the photographs. And this is one of a collection of photographs that were taken at this time. They're extraordinary photographs, I think, for a number of reasons. One is that they are really very high quality photographs. And this at the time is when really the only photography available to working class people was the old box brownie that had only recently come onto the market, and took those very tiny little photographs. You probably got some of them yourselves in sort of old biscuit tins and things like that. But this was taken by a family friend who was a keen amateur photographer, and he had one of those cameras, much more advanced camera, I'm told, at the time, the sort that had the kind of the concertina between the lens and the body of the camera, and those were generally only available to sort of wealthier people, middle class and upper class people. Certainly not generally available to working class people. You had to be a real enthusiast to invest your money in that. So it's very unusual. Oh, sorry, I had a phone call coming in. It's very unusual to have working class life depicted in this way, in this kind of quality of photographs. And in fact, what is even more extraordinary is that the photographs are very informal. So most photographs of working class people in Britain at this time were kind of mimics of studio portraits. They're very formal, very stiff, people standing to attention and so forth, and posing. And what is extraordinary about these photographs is that they were clearly taken at a weekend, probably a Sunday afternoon, I imagine, probably after a session in the pub at lunchtime and going down into the allotment. And they show the working class people. My grandfather was a basket maker, but they show these people in a relaxed environment. And one has to ask oneself, what is the story that is being told here? And I'm telling you a story about the photographs and how the photographs maybe came about. But these photographs themselves are about telling a particular story. And as I say, it's a story of two friends, maybe. The carnations, I expect, are from their own greenhouse. My grandfather grew carnations in his greenhouse. That much I do know. But there's something slightly unusual about having a photograph of two men sitting down with bunches of flowers at this time. But let me show you the next photograph. If we could have the next slide. So this one from the same set. Here we have my grandfather's friend again, sitting in his deck chair with a cigarette. Always seems to have a cigarette. And there we have my great grandmother and two aunts of mine, my grandfather's sisters or great aunts, sat in the deck chairs. And my grandfather is sat in a tin bath. And what is happening here, I'm told, is that they are basically messing around. They're basically having fun. And the story here is my grandfather has been busy working, and he hasn't even got a deck chair to sit on anymore. So he has to go and sit rather grumpily in the tin bath while everyone else is asleep. And of course, they're only pretending to be asleep. So it's part of a joke. And so they're actually constructing a story. Now, one of the other things that is interesting is still here we have a feeling necessarily, this isn't necessarily an urban space. But if we look at the next photograph and the next slide, we start to see the houses at the back. And these are typical Victorian sort of working class houses. They're terraced red brick houses. And here, photograph taken at the same time, or around, maybe the same day, or around the same time. And I have my great uncle poking his head out by the deck chair. The friends, that's my grandmother, second from the left, and my great aunt on the far right. And of course, there's my granddad's friend again, poking away in the corner with his cigarette in his mouth. So again, there are stories being hinted at here. The gentleman who's the family friend, who I believe is the person who owned the camera, I was told, is dressed quite formally. You know, he's wearing his collar and tie. And although that was quite common, wouldn't necessarily wear it down the allotment at a weekend. So there's some kind of special occasion going on here. My grandmother is carrying some flowers. They could be just the carnations, or again, it could be linked to an event. So there are hints all the time. There are fragments of stories of this working class life. But it's a very relaxed photo again. It's not, they are a group, but it's not formal in the way that many of these photos are. And you can see the proximity of the houses to the allotments now. These allotments, and of course we could talk for a long time about the importance of allotments and so forth, but nevertheless, these allotments are almost like extensions of the back garden. And they're very much a part of urban working class life at this time. And if I could show you the last slide of mine, and then you get a, now it's not a great photograph because the people are actually slightly out of focus, but it's the same people. My grandfather is there on the right. My great grandmother is sitting reading the paper underneath a kind of shed shelter type thing, and my great aunts are in the deck chairs. But there you really get a sense of the proximity of the urban space to this allotment, which is a kind of a recreation of a kind of rural space, I suppose. One of the interesting things is, and I'll finish on this because I've probably been going about 10 minutes now. One of the interesting things here is that the houses are still there. You can go to, that's a street called Acre Street, and you can still go there. Those houses are still in place. The allotments, however, aren't. The allotments were built on in the 1960s, and there's some, I was going to say new housing, but by now it's not, it's 60-year-old housing, but a small estate that has been built there on that particular ground. So what I suppose I'm saying here is what these photos do is to tell a layering of stories, and they're not the urban stories that are associated with special events or famous people, or this happened here or that happened there, or this is where so and so lived. It's not the stories of the blue plaques or anything like that. These are the stories of working class people and how they navigated their own urban space in the sense of their domestic space, I suppose, and the immediate space around their domestic space, and the way that they created a kind of a, maybe it's overstating it to say a rural idyll, but they created this place where they could sit and relax as if they were in the countryside. You know, they're not doing much digging and gardening there. They're actually enjoying it as if it were their garden, as if it were their rural space. So the layering of the narratives that these photographs tell, I think, is something that really interests me. And as I say, I think these photographs are rare and quite almost unique in the way that they represent working class life in Manchester 100 years ago. I'll stop there. I could talk for a long time, Yolandi, about these photographs because they mean a lot to me, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing something so personal today. So I'm going to go over to our second speaker. It's Christina Kiminami. She's a research associate in data visualization for urban studies at Loughborough University. And she's also part of the interdisciplinary team behind the Town Observatory. Over to you, Chris.
Hello, hello everyone. Thank you, Yolandi, for the introduction. And I'm really happy to present to all of you this project, a practice-based case study developed in collaboration with the Loughborough Library Local Studies Volunteer Group. So it's a collaboration. This journey actually began in 2024, thanks to introduction from our colleague, Dr. Aline Fernandes Barata. That initial connection blossomed into a rewarding partnership within the Town Observatory framework. So before I dive into the story maps and the project itself, let me tell you a bit about the group. They are incredibly active and dedicated collective. They curate exhibitions, manage extensive local archives, and play a central role in heritage events through Loughborough. So this collaboration was not only about recording history, but also about amplifying their voices, showcasing their knowledge, and sharing their work with a broader audience. Our partnership with the library volunteer group aimed to produce 3 new story maps, each highlighting a different aspect of Loughborough rich heritage. So the 3 story maps that we would feed the Loughborough Stories platform, which is this screenshot you can see in the slide, which is one of the platforms you can find in the town observatory. And the 3 story maps we did with them is Medieval Loughborough, Art Deco Trail, which are completed and published by now. And the third one, it's on the way for completion, very soon will come out, is Marketplace. So if I could go to the next slide, please. Yes. So our working rhythm was structured, but also very organic. We held monthly meetings with them and the entire impact team. And I met with them, with the group in person every 2 weeks. On average, we had about 3 meetings a month, and the session became the heartbeat of our project. They weren't just updates, they were lively spaces for idea generation, so storytelling and building trust. Over time, this informal and formal conversation straightened our relationship and fueled the creative process. So if we could, there you can see some pictures of our meetings. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Yes, if you could play and mute the video. So our approach went far beyond simply digitizing existing materials. We carefully selected content that was not only historically accurate, but also engaging and meaningful for the audience. We created an intuitive index, added interactive maps, images, and narratives to ensure the platform works seamlessly on desktop, tablet, and mobile devices. One of the most exciting features is the AI-generated audio podcast developed in collaboration with the computer science department at Loughborough University. The volunteer group wrote and fact-checked all the content, after which we used AI tools to generate voice narrations, making the experience more immersive and accessible. Each story segment includes transcripts so users can read along or choose silent mode if they prefer. A real highlight we used in the Medieval Loughborough is the fictional short story written by the volunteers themselves, bringing local legends and characters to life through voice. And the one that's in the slides is the Art Deco 7 episodes podcast, which we cloned their voices. So they were super excited about that. In terms of the content, our goal was never to replicate what's already easily found, but instead we aim to uncover the hidden gems, those intimate local stories that only a long-time resident would know. We sought the gold dust of Loughborough heritage, and we found plenty. Next, if you could pause the video and go to the next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So also a story map, like Medieval Loughborough, is stemmed to an unexpected outcome. As we approach the completion of Medieval Loughborough, for example, story maps, the group had a brilliant idea. So why not turn this into a walking tour? So we co-created the Medieval Loughborough Walk, which debuted during the Heritage Open weekend on September 2025. The response was incredible. Full bookings, and now became an official walk tour available year-round in Loughborough. This was a major milestone for us because turning a digital co-creation into a live community experience. We continue to track engagement and gather feedback to online channels and community events. An outcome we are especially proud of is the group growing confidence with digital tools. They didn't just want us to build things with or for them. They wanted to learn how to do it themselves. So how to become autonomous. So with the support from the computer science department again, we hosted 3 sessions of AI audio storytelling workshops in which the volunteers learn to script, produce, and generate their own narrations. Their enthusiasm was so high that they even applied for funding to access professional versions of the platforms that we taught them how to use. So showing true ownership and focus on sustainability. Yeah, you can see some pictures. You can see the walking tours, they're showing the maps, and also the first 2 pictures, the workshop I mentioned. So heading to the end of my time here, I want to share with you a video of their testimonial because I could not just talk about this experience with them and not let them have a little voice there. So bear with me. Yes, so
I think that the skills that we have gained from this will be very useful in the future. We are retired people learning totally new skills, especially to do with podcasts, which is something we've never been involved in before. And I really enjoyed producing scripts and putting voices to them, which was something that we've never attempted and never thought that we would, but we really enjoyed it. I've been involved in doing a lot of the research for the information sheets for the podcast. It's a really good way of understanding the history of Loughborough, and it's been really challenging, some of the new IT skills I've had to learn, but it's been very enjoyable.
Yeah, I would agree. The going to the workshops at university were unbelievable. We've learned so much over the period of time I've been involved with the university. It's been fascinating to look at it. But also, another thing which has been nice is using our research skills to look into the history of Loughborough, especially medieval Loughborough. I was involved deep into that one, and we produced leaflets, or the university produced leaflets with our information, and we ended up doing a walk. It was absolutely fantastic. We was walking around medieval Loughborough, talked, and we had 3 sessions which totally sold out. It was lovely. And then to give the people these leaflets, I should never forget their reaction when they looked at them and said, wow, this is fantastic. It was brilliant. And I've learned so much and fully enjoyed it, and still am enjoying it.
Hi, I've enjoyed working on this project. I've enjoyed the researching of the colouring of finding out about the history of all the different buildings. Then getting involved with the other side of it, with the podcast and that, and going to the workshops and learning completely new skills that I've never done before. I've not really got too involved in that at the moment, but I am doing a lot of the research ready for the podcast and that, so I'm finding it very enjoyable. And I've been absolutely thrilled to go back to Loughborough University because I'm a Loughborough alumna. So it's been great to go back and learn some new skills, actually. So podcasting and using ChatGPT and other AI services, which I've not really done before. But the part that I probably enjoyed the most was planning and leading the guided walk, because I'm an accredited Leicestershire tour guide and that's what I do.
So thank you so much, Yolanda. I hope I didn't go too much from my time.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was, I think the videos does make a great contribution just to hear the testimonies from the volunteer group. So our third speaker is Shamsunisa Miles Timotheus. She's a junior researcher at the Gauteng City Region Observatory. And her presentation today is going to focus on narrative dialogue and co-produced knowledge in urban observatories. Over to you, Sham.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. Next slide, please, Nalez. So today I'm going to be speaking about going beyond the indicators, about looking at narratives, dialogues, and the co-production of knowledge in urban observatories. And for today, I'm going to be focusing on a project which I coordinate, which is called the Colored Community in Post-Apartheid Gauteng. Just to say there's multiple projects that could be used as an example, but for today I'm focusing on this one. And for those who might not be familiar with the history of South Africa, colored is a term which was kind of created or enforced by the apartheid government to classify a population group, which originally was people who did not fit into the black or white category, and later on got redefined according to your mixed ancestry. But it's also important to note that their identity was formed through the process of creolization, and that it is continually and creatively remade across both time and space. Next slide, please. So why does narratives matter? Well, as someone who works with data almost daily, and I'm trained in demography, I know that data explains patterns. But data does not always explain the meanings behind the patterns that we see. And so the narratives really take us beyond what that standard indicators tells us. It gives us a story. And when we were looking at the Quality of Life 7 survey data, I looked at it across different racial groups, and I saw some patterns emerging for the colored population. For example, we see a much higher level of people who have political apathy, where their reason for not wanting to vote is because voting is just a waste of time for them, or that they felt that they were being racially discriminated against, and it was a higher proportion than the average for Gauteng. You also see a high proportion of discouraged work seekers, but also a much higher level of dissatisfaction with provincial government. And these stats essentially showed us a trend, but it left us with questions as to why this is happening. Next slide, please. And during this process, I learned a lot, and as a group, we learned a lot, and that is that information flows in multiple directions. So as researchers, we have the ability and we have the responsibility to go out and disseminate our information to the rest of the world, to the communities, but we also have to acknowledge the fact that information also comes through from communities. Sometimes we extract information and we leave it there, but in reality, we should also allow communities to navigate what we look at. A lot of the times they have a lot more insight into what actually needs to be researched. And what I also saw, and what's very important, is not sticking to one type of research design, because in reality, different types of research designs complement each other in a very important way. So for example, we have quantitative and qualitative, and if we bring these two together, we have what we call the sequential mixed method design. And depending on the direction that we choose to go, it can either be explanatory or exploratory. Next slide, please. So we also want to use interdisciplinary approaches, and we've used interdisciplinary approaches in our project because the urban reality is complex, and this it requires us to put on multiple lenses as we're looking at different themes. So for example, some of the themes that we pull on to try and capture the full experience of the community is sociology, geography, psychology, and political science. And this is through using certain methods or maybe theories and ways of looking at things, but also using multiple resources and not restricting ourselves to one way of analyzing. So we look at quantitative survey data, qualitative interviews, archival data, voting patterns data, and so forth. Next slide, please. We also have to think about the inclusive co-production. So one thing that we have done is we initially went to literature and looked at what literature had to say about the colored community. And a lot of what we found was either purely on identity and mainly focused on the Western Cape, which is a different province to where we're living. And this is because the Western Cape has over 40% of the population who is colored, whereas in Gauteng, the colored population are the minority, where we are only 3% of the total population. So what we did is we wanted to get information from South Africa, so not only the colored community, because we don't want to be exclusionary, but we wanted to know what people in South Africa have to say about the colored community as a whole. And so we had a call for written pieces where we invited people to write poems, essays, short stories, and personal reflections. And what came through from these pieces was struggle, violence, which is what we see in the media. The media always portrays this about the colored community, right? But what came out from it that we don't always get from media and television is diversity within the community, identity, being proud in one's identity, the resilience and the hope for a better future. We're also doing a photography documentation, which is guided by the written pieces, where we've seen what people have identified as being important for the community. And sometimes this is a particular building or street. And we are also engaging with community members for them to tell us what is important and what shouts out or screams out, this is my community. And we are constantly engaging with the local leaders and stakeholders as we go. We'll proceed with the project. Next slide, please. And then just to say that after the written pieces, we asked people how they felt about writing and how they felt about the fact that we're going to be using their story, their written piece. And someone said, you know, they're so happy because their history is not behind us. It's something that we're carrying forward with our voices that's now going to be documented. Someone said, thank you to the GCR for giving these stories a home and for recognizing the lives and the words of ordinary people. Someone said that this recognition shows me that our voices matter and that our stories have a place in South Africa. And for me, the most heartfelt one was when someone said to me, I felt so seen. Thank you, everyone. That's all from me.
Thank you, Sham. Thank you very much for sharing this amazing project with us. Our final speaker today is Tembani, and he's a researcher at the Gauteng City Region Observatory. His work explores the cultural politics of place and street renaming in Gauteng. Over to you, Tembani.
Thank you so much, Yolandi. I think I'm going to time myself because I have so much to say. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about like my talk is titled Toponymy vis-a-vis community and storytelling. And I'll be talking to you guys about two main things, two projects under this toponymy or place naming that I'm currently working on. One is a GCRO project that I'm currently leading, and the other is my PhD work. I started my PhD last year. I'm studying part-time. And so these two projects built on the premises on this slide. The first being that, you know, we take toponyms or place names as things that constitute storytelling, in the sense that they serve more than just a functional role as mundane tools of navigation on urban space. They also communicate powerful messages about a country's history or a city's history or its identity, the history of its people, the social political relations within any context. And in the context of South Africa, you know, toponymy or place naming was very exclusionary. It also served to exclude races. You guys are familiar with the history of South Africa and apartheid and colonialism. So these toponyms reflected European personage and legend, and they subjugated non-European knowledge. And they were also exclusionary along the lines of gender, in the sense that they told patriarchal narratives informed by assumptions of masculine hegemony. But after 1994, we got, you know, like after post-democratization, you have concerted state efforts to reflect a post-apartheid society. via symbolism, public heritage projects such as name changing. But it's a very controversial affair in the country, in the sense that it's fiercely opposed by a lot of certain communities. There are court cases, there are protests, there's vandalism of signposts, and there's also petitioning to kind of stop some pending name changes. And it's provoked very emotive debates revolving around things like race and cultural heritage. And such controversies show the importance of toponyms or place names, and they have grave implications for citizenship in the new South Africa. Next slide, please. So the first project that I'm going to talk to you about is a project that I'm currently working on at the GSRO, and have produced certain several things centering around this project. So the project explores how post 1994 name changes led by the state have unfolded, which is the most industrialized and most populous and most cosmopolitan province in the country. Looking at the opponents' justification, which is consulted, and is it tokenistic? Is it meaningful? And I'm looking at name changing vis-a-vis party political change and regime change. By this I mean, when a new party comes into power, what it does vis-a-vis name change. Does it deprioritize name changing, or does it prioritize name changes? And I'm using and Johannesburg, and it's qualitative in nature. The study is qualitative in nature. I'm engaging current and former municipal officials, and also using council resolutions on name of renamed streets and renamed places. So the main output out of this is an internal GSR, other things that, outputs that have resulted from this. Two maps of the month around street renaming. How we produced this was through knowledge co-production, because it's based on a partial database which we compiled as the GSRO in collaboration with municipal officials. Now, this is important because, these council resolutions which show consultation, or how the name change came about, or who was consulted and everything, are not made available in the public domain. So people do not know how names were arrived at, and like one of the things that to the public, and so we mapped
Tembani,
yeah.
can I quickly interrupt you? My apologies. Your sound keeps on breaking up, and we just want to make sure that we don't miss your very important message.
Can you guys hear me?
Just heard you, and then it's gone again.
Seems like we lost him.
It seems like we lost Tembani. My apologies, everybody that's attending. While we get Tembani back, we can just give him a minute. Maybe I think it's just internet connection issues at this stage. I think there's a few things that's really coming out so far that I
Hi.
can just maybe touch on. Are you back, Timbani?
Yeah, I'm back, but I'm on Shamsonisa's laptop. I don't know what's wrong with mine. I'm
Perfect.
so
You can go
sorry, guys.
ahead.
Oh, okay. So I think where I was talking about maps of the month that we produced. These are interactive data visualizations which we produced as the GSRO, and we've produced them in association with municipal officials from both Tshwane and Johannesburg. And why this is important is because, such information like council resolutions, information documents from which we extracted these name changes and, put them on the database before mapping the maps that I'm going to talk about in the next 3 slides. They are not readily available in the public domain. So communities don't really know this is stuff that's supposed to be available. And now the other thing that complicates things is, some resolutions, like for name changes that happened in the 1990s, are not ready. Like they are not the municipalities don't have them. So what we've done is after these maps of the month, we engage the readers and we encourage them to share their unmapped renamed streets in their respective communities at info@gsro.ac.za. And we've also participated in the public domain to make renaming processes and politics accessible to the public so the public knows about this. Next slide, please. So these are the maps of the month that I was talking to you guys about in the previous slides. This is something on gender and race representation in Johannesburg street renaming initiatives. Now you can see on the first map is gender representation before and after renaming based on the partial database that we compiled as the GSRO in association with the municipal colleagues. And the second one is a maps race representation before and after the name changing of streets in Johannesburg. Then on the right is an op-ed, one of the op-eds that I published recently. Next slide, please. Okay. So same thing. This is the same. These are the maps of the month for Pretoria, Tshwane, gender and race representation, and this is an op-ed that I published with a colleague on one of the most controversial street name changes, the street name change proposals that the city of Johannesburg tabled. Next slide, please. Okay, finally, this is the second main project that I want to talk to you about. It's my PhD project. It's titled Beyond Technocratic Toponymy in Post-Apartheid South Africa, and I'm exploring the contemporary multifaceted place naming landscapes in Johannesburg. I'm particularly interested in the relationship between unofficial place naming and official place naming, the various kinds of official place naming. Particularly interested in the logics behind place naming in the city and the messaging communicated by these different kinds of urban urban toponymy. And I from the literature, the scholarship, and the policies, I identified 4 place naming modes, and I've listed them there. And I adopted a qualitative approach. I just submitted a proposal, it was approved, and now I have a full candidate. And it's a qualitative approach. It employs multiple case studies. It's the multiple case study ethnography using 4 cases that exemplify at least one mode of toponymy. So these are the case studies on the right. Then, structured interviews, walking interviews, and documentary research, as well as visual ethnography. I think one thing I will say, this is my last slide, that makes this different from other kinds of scholarship out there on toponymy, is that it goes beyond top-down toponymy or government-led name changing or government-led naming to explore other kinds of toponymy that are at play in the post-apartheid city and kinds of documents and archives them. So thank you so much. guys.
Thank you, Timbani. And well recovered after your technical difficulties. So thank you so much for sticking to it. So we're now going to move into the discussion section of today's session. So thank you to all the speakers for your wonderful contributions. And I'll just start with a question from my side, since I didn't spot any questions in the chat. So I can just ask all the presenters to please switch on your cameras and unmute yourselves if possible. And so the question that I want to bring to you today is, so across today's presentations, storytelling has emerged as more than communication. It also functions as a way of producing knowledge about urban life. So I want to ask you, from your own perspectives and your own projects, how does storytelling change what we are able to know or understand about cities or towns or urban spaces that conventional data or indicators cannot capture? And I would like to invite a short response from each of you, starting with Mike, and then Chris, then Sham, and then Timbani. Mike?
Yes, so I think one of the easiest ways to answer that, I suppose, is to say that we know we have lots of knowledge about towns and cities. We have maps, we have data, we have lists, we have all kinds of knowledge. And the best way I can describe it is that what storytelling doesn't do necessarily is produce knowledge in the same way that data produces knowledge, or science produces knowledge, or technocracy produces knowledge. It doesn't necessarily tell us how things are, but it tells us how things are experienced and how things are felt, how the world is felt and experienced. And that's really important. And sometimes, as we've heard from the presentations, all the presentations in a way, there are layers of stories and experience that are hidden very often. And part of our job in this work is almost to act as archaeologists and to somehow uncover or recover some of those stories. We heard about how people felt their stories had found a home. We heard about the unofficial and the official, and how those play out against each other. So a lot of this is about agency, and storytelling gives agency to people to produce knowledge. There we go. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mike. No, thank you. Thank you. Chris, do you want to come in here?
Yes. Also, if I may complement that, is it shows us the connection that people have with the city, with what makes that a place, what makes that transform that, what is a blueprint, a simple square or a simple house, a place, something with meaning, as Mike well pointed, how's the experience there, it brings that connection. Cities, towns, whatever the scale is, it's made for us to live in. And disregarding that, the experience that people have in that, I think it shouldn't be. It's something as important as the big data that's collected. Everything complements each other. I think that connection is as important as the maps and heat maps and everything, because it shows how that place really functions, and how that's interpreted and understood.
Thank you, Chris. Sham, can I invite you?
Yes, so just to reiterate what Prof. Michael said and Christina said, it's really about giving meaning to the data and getting a thorough understanding of your residents, and not just what is happening, but how that makes people feel. So for example, we have data on quality of life, and we look at these patterns over time and how has Gauteng changed, how has people to some degree felt, but we don't know why people felt the way that they felt. And I think storytelling makes us understand why people felt the way they felt in a particular space at a particular time. Because sometimes the data might tell us that there is progress, maybe there's more jobs, but are people happy about the jobs? How are they experiencing what is happening around them?
Thank you. Thank you, Sham. Timbani?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. I don't know what happened because now I'm audible, but I wasn't audible when it was time for me to present. Forces like working against me won't succeed. I'm sorry about that though. But I think what I gained today, what is becoming evident to me is that people people make spaces and people make places and places make people. So it's a two-way street. It's not just people making meaning in places. I think also um, places kind of shape um, people. But I also want to particularly like say something in particular how like what I've learned from the works presented today. I think especially vis-a-vis the GSRO project that I've worked on, it's made me realize that insofar as there's collaboration between the GSRO and like municipal agencies out there tasked with renaming or naming, there's not like there hasn't been much engagement, like real engagement with communities. And so I think going forward with my like with my PhD work, which is based on a multiple case study ethnography, there will be a concerted effort to actually incorporate communities in the cases that I've chosen, like as study sites. So thank you so much for today's session. I feel like this is one thing I benefited, and it's something I was thinking about, but it was reified by my attendance of this important series. Thank you so much, webinar. Yeah.
Thank you, Timbani. I think before we close, we have a minute or two to spare. I see Rob has been posting comments, and I thought maybe Rob, can I invite you just to make a comment just before I bring the session to a close?
I'd love to make a comment, and if time allows, whether anybody had any thoughts on it. I love Sham's comment about I felt so seen. That kind of sense of ambiguity between seeing and listening and written and pictorial things, I thought was really fascinating. So the fact that you picked that out, Sham, if I'm saying that correctly, was really fascinating. I love that kind of thing that storytelling seems to do, which is almost be both visual and verbal, but also neither of them at the same time. And Mike talked about it with his photographs. Tembani, lots of fascinating things there when it comes to toponymy, and also Chris, whose work I know really well. That sense of the library group members, speaking about how they felt about stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to raise that point really. Whether anybody has anything else to add in a few minutes.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for contributing. I really appreciate that I could call on you. So I want to end the session on time, like the previous session. So I want to thank everybody for your active engagement in the discussion. And a special thank you to all our speakers for their really insightful and personal, inspiring contributions today. This session was actually really personal for me. This session on storytelling and community has highlighted how narrative, lived experience, and collaborative knowledge production, I think that collaborative is really key here, expand how we understand urban life. we have seen that while data helps us to identify patterns, storytelling helps us to understand the meaning and the people. So it reveals the identities, the histories, and the experiences that cannot be captured through indicators alone. So today's discussion also showed that storytelling is not neutral. It shapes how identity, belonging, heritage, and power are expressed in our cities or towns or urban spaces, whether through heritage narratives, community experiences, or even just the naming or the renaming of places. So with this final session, we now bring the Urban Latitude series comes to a close. We thank you for being part of this journey of shared learning and meaningful exchange. And I just want to note that all sessions were recorded and will be available on Loughborough University's repository by late next week, and we will send some links to everyone as well. I hope you have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are in the world. Keep safe there in India, Mike and Rob, and goodbye for now.